Well, this is a new idea. Something just kind of like for us to kind of sit down and discuss topics and, I mean, I guess you can call it a vodcast. Is that what it's called? Video podcast.
Is that a thing?
It is apparently.
I know a podcast with a video format, like where they just record it as video and have the audio as a podcast. I mean, Rooster Teeth does it, and I think some other ones do it too.
So. Well, anyway, no. The idea was we think of a topic and discuss it casually amongst each other.
You had to pick the hardest one. So
I did. No, I've had this idea lying around for a while. So essentially, the idea is if you could only pick one console from each generation and one game from that console, what would it be and why? So
you want to give them the more harder thing for it too, though?
What's that?
That it can be
per generation. So it's not just one game or one console from all generations per.
But it was also that it cannot be multiple platforms.
Preferably, yeah. It can't be.
So that took away my Resident Evil.
Yep.
So
I kind of did that purposely. I wanted Shane to think outside the box.
So yeah, this is gonna be fun. I mean, I kind of told him a little bit what I've got, but I still got some I'm really thinking about. That's kind of like
he wanted to go on the fly.
Yeah, I wanted to go on the fly. So I'll probably get pissed at myself later on after this is done, and just like, hey, I changed my mind. Let's read. Then never mind.
We'll see how it goes. So to start it off, though, we are going to skip the first two generations because, well, we weren't alive.
Yeah,
we were barely alive for the release of the NES. So we're young, man.
Yeah,
I've actually had that conversation with some other gamers. Like, oh my god, you're only like 30. I'm like, only 30.
Only, yeah. I mean, no, I'm turning 32 this year.
So am I. So yeah, we missed out on like all the Pongs, which I do have a Pong clone now. Finally.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And I do have like the Atari 2600 and the ColecoVision, but we didn't grow up with that, so I wanted this to be more so what we grew up with and how we feel about them. So, starting off, Nintendo Entertainment System or the Sega Master System. Now, this one's pretty much the easiest one. To be fair, I didn't even know about the Master System.
Neither did I. I only knew about NES, so the NES.
And long story short, the Nintendo had the market pretty much in a tight grip at that time, at least in America.
I mean, my dad grew me up on Nintendo. Like, he had the system himself, and he would take me with him to Blockbuster and like pick out games he wanted to play and stuff.
Yeah, so, I didn't know about the Master System really until I started collecting. It is a pretty cool system, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to go ahead and say that I know for a fact that both of our picks in this one is the Nintendo Entertainment System. Yeah. Let's be fair, there's so many. The Master System just didn't have the classic franchises that Nintendo had and still has to this day. So, but what game would you pick from that?
I told you earlier what my original idea was, which was going to be Super Mario 3, which was one of my favorites. But no, I thought it real hard after looking at his collection and stuff like that. But I don't know, I didn't see if you actually had this game in your collection. But I'm going to go with Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers.
I don't have that one, actually.
I mean, I don't know why. It's just I loved the cartoon when I was little, and everything was really big with Disney. I mean, Disney's still technically a big chain.
And Disney had some of the best games back in the day.
Some of the hardest games back in the day.
Yeah, well,
but no,
back in the day was.
I just loved Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. It had that really cool, like, vintage, like, cartoon feel. To me, it felt like the cartoon in a way, even though obviously looking back at it now, it's not nowhere close to it. But I mean, to me, when I was like 3-year-old me, it's like, yeah, this is Rescue Rangers.
Your imagination made it out like it was exactly like the cartoon.
Yeah, but I loved it. I mean, I thought it was fun. I mean, it was hard but fun.
Yeah, so I mean, it's how games were back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, without a doubt, Mike Tyson's Punch Out. So
even though I didn't think that you would choose that, my mind is like, I bet he's probably gonna choose it.
It's crazy, dude. Like, so recently I've introduced myself to so many classic franchises that either I had very little exposure to as a kid or no exposure to at all. And like, I've been loving the Mega Man series.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whole other
Did you
story.
say you hated it when you were young?
I didn't hate it.
But
I
you
just
did
didn't
not-
understand it, that it was too fucking hard. But now...
Understandable. Because you didn't know that you had to switch your character for these certain bosses at the time.
I didn't know the whole secret behind it was there's boss weaknesses and all that kind of stuff.
I got spun around in the chair.
Yeah. These chairs aren't the best. But no, I didn't know that. And then once I kind of learned that, I kind of fell in love with the game. And I'm working on 4. I've beaten 2 of them already.
Ooh, awesome.
Not 1. I haven't beat the first. Anyway, that's beside the point. But Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was one that I played all the time as a kid. My grandmother, I didn't have an NES myself growing up. It was actually my grandmother's. And she had like 10 games. I think I have most of the games back in my collection now. But one of them was Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And I just remember playing that game over and over again and getting so pissed and then finally beating somebody and then realizing, why was that so easy? Why did it take me so long to figure that out? And still today, I find myself, I play it once or twice a week because I'm actually trying to speedrun it now. It's actually a new thing.
Ooh,
yeah.
It's going to be fun to watch that.
I'm working on it. But no, and there's still secrets that I find to it to this day, and I absolutely love it. So, yeah, I mean, for me, it would be Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. So.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So I guess it's up to the next generation, which was the Super Nintendo, the Sega Saturn,
Genesis. Sega Genesis.
Or Sega Genesis, sorry.
So,
I always got those confused, even though I knew it was Genesis, but I don't know why it's just always stuck with Sega Saturn to me in my head.
oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know why.
We'll get to that.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, we are excluding some
systems that was like... what,
less mainstream.
like Jaguar.
Yeah, like the Atari Jaguar and stuff like that. And as much as I am slowly
But that was
introducing
more
myself...
PlayStation era when that came out.
Yeah, it was. As much as I loved... Or I'm enjoying exposing myself to the TurboGrafx 16. Didn't have one as a kid, didn't know anybody who did. So for me, it was Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo. So that's what we're moving on to next.
Mm-hmm.
So which...
I was going to say All-Stars, Mario.
So you're going to go with the Super Nintendo?
Yeah, Super Nintendo Mario All-Stars, it had all the greats, even though technically it is kind of like a reproduce, but it's on a different console, completely of different generation. But it had multiple games. Like it had the classic or the Lost Levels, which was never released on the Sega or the place. I'm sorry, I'm already drunk. On the original NES that I
in America.
In America.
That was the actual Super Mario Brothers 2 released in Japan.
Which I hated the American Super Mario 2.
So yeah,
but
we'll talk about that later.
But on All Stars, even though this was originally going to be my pick for NES, it had Super Mario 3, which is one of my all-time Mario games. So that's what I'm going to go with. It had so many great games to pick from. I always just skipped Mario 2 because I hated Mario 2 and it should have never existed. It was different.
It was actually a reproduction of a completely different game.
Mm-hmm.
But people liked it. Some people didn't. But
I mean,
I can't argue.
I like the cartoon that had some of those characters based in it. But,
yeah.
But I didn't like the game.
Fair enough. So for me, I'm gonna have to go with the Sega Genesis. Obviously, if you've seen my Sega James episodes,
I think I know what it might be.
I don't think you do. I don't think you do. It's not the one behind me.
Oh, okay. I'm totally wrong.
So for this one, like there were so many Genesis games growing up. This was the system that I had. This is the first one I had as a kid that I owned myself and absolutely loved. And yeah, I could go with Sonic because I was such a huge Sonic fanatic, and I still am.
Same.
Sort of.
Unless it's American-made Sonic games.
Yeah, it's a tolerable level of Sonic fanatic. But
Generations.
Yeah, Generations, Mania, all that kind of stuff it took a while. Anyway, regardless. But, yes, Streets of Rage 2 was one that I also considered because love that game, but I wanted to go with something that maybe I can get more value out of. And I went with one that I don't think you know. Kid Chameleon.
I think I've heard of that.
Oh, man.
But I don't think I've ever played it.
So Kid Chameleon was basically a Mario ripoff.
Oh, really?
It really was, because you play as a character, you run around, you hit your head on blocks to get power-ups and all that kind of stuff. So, but the cool thing about this game, for one, there's so many power-ups. And, like, there's the Iron Knight who can climb walls, the Red Stealth, I think he's called. He's like a red samurai. He's got a sword and he runs really fast. The one that you would absolutely love is Maniacs. He basically looks like Jason and he throws axes. Freaking phenomenal. And there's so many other power-ups, but the game has like over 100 levels.
I think I know what you're talking about. It's like, it's in the back of my head, but I think I've seen it.
You probably have, yeah.
I don't think I've ever played it, but I think I might even came across it like Smart Video back in the day.
You may have, yeah. But there's like over 100 levels for this game.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't play every level. There's like different paths that you can take. So thinking about it, I feel like I can get more bang on my buck for that game. So, yeah.
I will say, this is just, if I didn't go with All-Stars, this was going to be my other pick. Which I think it's like Poltergeist?
Poltergeist.
Yeah, Poltergeist for Genesis, which, that was weird.
It was a weird game.
It was a really weird game, and it was basically right before they started doing the rating system, too, because there's a lot of blood and nudity in that game for something that was a child's game, basically, where you had to scare, like, these people out of the house, but you're following the same family.
Yeah.
Different houses.
That game really went under the radar.
It really did. I mean, it's really fun.
But it's like Splatterhouse,
really,
too.
Yeah.
Because Splatterhouse was the same way.
It's just super difficult because it's more like a puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And I never got to beat it, but I got to like the fourth house, and that's where I always like screwed up. But, I mean, that would have been my second choice if I wouldn't have gone with All-Stars. So more difficult one now.
It gets a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
So now we would move on to Sega Saturn, PlayStation, or N64.
All right, I'll let you go on this one. Let's go ahead. Yeah, you can go.
So I have a lot to talk about with this. So, yeah, these chairs aren't the best.
No, they're not. That was my alarm going off for.
Very impromptu video that we're doing
Sorry, guys.
So there goes my phone. Right? So for me, like, I remember I got the Sega Saturn for Christmas one year, and I wasn't the huge fan of it. So this is a video I do want to talk about at some point, was the transition to 3D, because I have a lot to talk about for this. To be fair, or just to make it short, I wasn't a huge fan of the transition to 3D at this time. And so I had the Sega Saturn, I had a few games for it. The game I loved was Sonic Jam, but that doesn't count because it's like Mario All-Stars. It had Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Sonic and Knuckles on it. Mm-hmm. But the 3D games just didn't do it for me, and I wasn't exposed.
Felt like a lot of the was it Sega CD you said?
Saturn.
Or Sega Saturn?
Yeah.
Well, Sega Saturn and Sega CD, I guess they came out at the same time, but it was more Genesis for the CD, correct?
Yeah, well, you had to have the Sega Genesis for the Sega CD.
But a lot of it, from what I saw, was still mouse click based kind of games. Even for the Saturn, I mean, there was some that were 3D based, like there was Resident Evil that came out.
So,
and but there was still quite a few that seemed like it was like Myst related in a way.
Oh yeah, so you're like the point and click adventures.
Yeah,
There's a lot of those for like the Japanese versions. Believe me, I picked up a Japanese lot of Sega Saturn games, and that was 99% of what I picked up. And if you don't speak Japanese, you're fun. It's fun though. But regardless, I didn't know that there were still some 2D games that were released, but everybody was like, 3D, it's the new thing, it's so exciting, and I'm like, cool, whatever. Mm-hmm. So when I saw the PlayStation, I was like, well, I have a system that can do that, and I really wasn't intrigued by it. And not to go off subject, I also feel like this is a weird pivotal point when video games started becoming cool.
It started getting more mainstream.
Yeah, because like, the first two generations, or not the first two, but the two generations we spoke about before, you were kind of a nerd if you played video games. But no, when the PlayStation came out, that was when, like, everybody played video games.
Yeah, but I will say, they did already have movie-based video games before the PlayStation.
True.
They had like
Yeah.
because it was still, even though it was still nerd based, but I mean, Super Mario Brothers came out as the movie. There was another one.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, there was Mortal Kombat. That was what, 96?
4 or 5 maybe.
Yeah, and then there was I think there was a third movie that was, is it Starfighter? I'm pretty sure Starfighter, because it was a video game, but they made it into a movie as well.
Street Fighter?
No, there was Street Fighter.
Street Fighter. Okay, yeah.
But there was one about a guy who was like a guy from Earth who went to space and shot aliens in the spaceship. I don't know. Sorry, go off. I mean, it was kind of still, it was getting mainstream, but it wasn't as mainstream as it was when it hit PlayStation, N64, and all that.
It just got to a point where like it became more acceptable to play video games, and
I will say that's probably when E3 started to get started, because it was CES originally, and then it started off at CES, and then they started doing their own E3 gaming thing too.
So, with all that said, I wasn't a huge fan of the transition to 3D until the N64. So I'm gonna have to go with the N64. Now, with that being said, one of my favorite franchises started off on the PlayStation, but it was a 2D side scroller, and nobody talked about 2D sides yet. 2D side scrollers at that time, because again, 3D was like the big thing, but it was just a weird time. So I'm gonna go with the N64, but I'm gonna talk about my game later. Where are you gonna go?
I'm also going with the N64.
Really?
Yes.
All right. Cool.
So I'm gonna go with this I know for a fact that, at least to my knowledge, was never released in any other consoles, was Star Wars Shadows of the Empire. I know it probably got some hate, if I remember correctly, but it was I'm assuming it was like in between Empire and Return, if I remember correctly, in the story based of the actual movies. But it was really cool. I mean, you got to basically got to see another side of what was like on Hoth during the battle. You get to actually fly one of the ships in Hoth, which is kind of what I guess would say started get people wanting to play.
Sorry, I was thinking of Family Guy. I don't know why they call it Hoth. It should be called Kolth.
No, but I think it's what kind of get them later on working on Rogue Squadron, because the whole, like, there is parts in the game where you actually do fly ships and you shoot other star fleets and stuff like that. But it was really cool. It was just seeing things from a different point of view in the game. I will say one of the most annoying parts in the game that I really hated, though, was when you drive the speeder bike in Tatooine, because that was a bitch. I will just say that right now. That was probably a bitch to play if I can remember playing it. I don't think I could probably do it as good as I did back then, but I mean, I thought it was really cool. It was like one of the first earlier N64 starter games that came out. I think there was like 4 that you could pick out of, and I think Mario 64 was one of the originals that came with it. And then I think Shadows. I want to say there was another one, but I remember Shadow of the Empire was one of the earlier game titles that came out at the same time. But yeah, that's my choice. I'm interested to hear yours.
So mine's gonna be kind of weird.
Uh-oh.
So again, I wanted to go with what I can get the most out of, and I'm gonna have to go, believe it or not, WWF No Mercy.
I'm pretty sure I had that one. No, I had Raw's War. Sorry.
Oh. No Mercy was... I have so many fond memories of that game, and it's still so much fun to this day to play. But, I feel like I had to have one wrestling game in there. I was a huge wrestling fanatic back in that time. I'm not anymore. But it was just so much fun. So many great memories. Creating characters. It's just a good time. And it's still so much fun to play to this day. So,
do you have my interest? Because I had a second choice earlier. Do you have what would have been if you couldn't have picked that? What would have been your
Oh,
second choice.
Put me on the spot here.
Well, I'm gonna do one on my own self too. So I was just curious what your thought was.
So to kind of go back to what I was saying before about how like 3D was kind of a weird transition for me.
It really was.
And a lot of it was just, it was ugly looking. It was just awful.
Blocky?
Yeah, very blocky.
It still is.
Like, it was, yeah. And even,
Like
it's worse. Yeah, it's worse to go back now. But, I mean, if I
It was
had
the
to pick,
greatest thing, though.
yeah, back then. But if that was the case, I would probably go with Ocarina of Time. Because
I can see that.
It still looks amazing to this day. I'm sorry.
I can
I
see
think
that.
it looks great.
Mine would have been GoldenEye.
Okay, I'll give you that.
I mean, GoldenEye, yeah, I think that's the other one I was trying to think of. That was one of the earlier titles, but GoldenEye is like one of the best multiplayer games.
Oh yeah, and it still is.
It still is, and it's. I think I couldn't remember. I'm not entirely sure, but I think you could have also connected to other systems too, so you can have LAN parties like PlayStation did.
I'm pretty sure.
Because I know PlayStation allowed you to do like a LAN party kind of situation.
I didn't have that many friends.
I didn't either.
I
So it was just me
about
and one
parties.
other friend playing games.
Yeah.
But
There was only one system for me, is what it was.
But it was that, and actually no. It's a hard.
Oh boy,
it's a hard second double choice. It was either that or Turok 2, because Turok 2 was an awesome game too, and I was like a beast in that game. But I mean, I'll probably stick with GoldenEye as my second choice for the N64.
All right.
So.